Hello everyone and welcome to our channel. We have a good friend of ours, a lawyer, Nick Bajaj, with us here.
Yes, sir.
And we will share a couple of neat things regarding real estate law and law in general, right?
Yep.
So can you tell us a little bit about yourself, my friend?
So I've been a lawyer for about 7 years. I ran a full practice in Vaughan for about 4 years, focused on a couple of real estate projects, got back into the law a couple of months ago, run a full service firm now which mainly focuses on real estate law. It's called Marathon Law Professional Corporation. We have an office in Mississauga, but we also have an office in Vaughan.
Amazing. I will have the link below just to promote you, and I know you're doing a great and fantastic job. What I hear from my colleagues and my own experience.
Yeah.
So let's talk about a status certificate. Most people, what it is, that's from the Condo Corporation, right? Like that's you can elaborate on that.
Yeah. So for anyone that's new to real estate, status certificates are basically the history of a condo corporation. Normally, when a realtor like yourself makes an offer on a property, they make it conditional upon financing, but they also make it conditional upon a status certificate review. And that would be if a property is governed by a condo corporation, not a freehold property, but a condo corporation.
Right.
Now, it can be a condo townhouse, it can be a condo unit in a high-rise building. It doesn't matter. You should always request the status certificate because it'll give you the overall health of the condo corporation. Now, what does that mean? What is the status certificate? It's a pretty big document, which is why which I always tell people. Yeah. So it can be a little overwhelming when you first do get a copy of it, and if you're a first-time home buyer, or it's your first time dealing with a condo, it can be a little bit overwhelming. That's why I always tell people, send it to a lawyer like myself to have it reviewed. The status certificate goes over any lawsuits the condo corporation might be going through, financial statements that give you a financial snapshot of the condo corporation, how healthy the reserve fund is. So the reserve fund deals with repairs, it deals with maintenance, it deals with any payroll for any of the cleaning staff in the condo corporation. So you want to make sure that the condo management is actually taking care of the building,
right?
Because when you buy the building, you're paying maintenance fees. These maintenance fees basically go into the reserve fund. You're paying for the condo corporation to essentially govern itself accordingly. So when you see a status certificate and you see lawsuits, you see something called a special assessment, then those are all red flags. But there's a lot that goes into it. That's why I always recommend people to get it reviewed by a competent lawyer.
Yeah, so it is interesting. We show properties and stuff like that, and clients see a particular place. They're like, I want to go in firm.
Yeah.
Fine. And there's like, we don't need to look at this, or we don't need to look at that. Like, I want to make sure I have a good offer on the table, especially a few years ago when we were dealing with stuff like that.
Of course.
So a lot of people wanted to neglect that fact. Not sending it I looked at status certificates. I have never gave approval. I always send it to a lawyer, right? Because I don't want to be dealing with that, nor I know what I'm looking at. I kind of know, but it's a good practice to send it to a lawyer.
Definitely.
And have it looked at, right?
Yeah, and we've been in situations where a realtor makes an offer on a property, and it was a hot market early last year. And we saw some deals where they went in firm without, requesting the status certificate.
Can you believe that?
Yeah. So it was alarming for us because what happens when we get mortgage instructions? One thing that the bank always asks for is an updated copy of the status certificate. Yes. And when they ask for this updated copy, the realtor doesn't have a copy, so we're basically walking in blind. So when we review the status certificate, there might be issues that come up. For example, we were in one scenario, this wasn't last year, this was a couple years back, where there was a special assessment levied against the condo corporation, which can actually drive up your maintenance fees. There was also pending lawsuits against the condo corporation. The reserve fund was quite low. So some lenders will actually ask us to disclose these issues to them because as lawyers, we also represent...
There are risks involved.
Yeah, there's risks involved. And before they lend us the money, they're going to ask us to make sure the status certificate's clean. So Schedule A banks like Scotia, RBC always ask for that. So once we disclose it to them, at the end of the day, it's their discretion whether they want to fund the deal. Now, most of the time, they may have a copy of the status certificate. But in this specific scenario, they did not. So when we told them that there was a special assessment, there was lawsuits, they actually flagged the deal.
Wow.
I mean, it closed, everything worked out in the end, but there was risks associated with not having that status from the beginning. Yeah.
So when we're looking at the status certificate, and we're looking at the particular funds or the safety blanket or reserve, it's like, I think it's called reserve, right?
Reserve fund, yeah.
The reserve fund, right? Is there any like structure you're kind of basing it, or you have to look at the history, or you have to look at what they're predicting it to be?
Yeah.
Within that reserve fund, or how do you make that decision?
Yeah.
Like you know what I mean? Like,
so one thing we always tell our clients, we're not in no way financial experts. We're not accountants.
Right.
So sometimes when you see the status certificate, you see these financial statements, you see these graphs, and it can be a little confusing.
Sure.
So we first start with the body of the status certificate to see whether or not it's overall a clean status. So, you know, is the reserve fund, is it audited? Is it unaudited? So if it's unaudited, we let our clients know that this is the funds that they have in the reserve fund, but it's been a while since they've actually checked.
So what's the difference?
I mean, audited would mean that somebody came in and actually checked to make sure the reserve fund was
Who is
adequate.
somebody
It was accurate,
like an accountant,
party, yeah.
like an outside party
like a big
to
accounting
see.
firm.
Got
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Okay.
So that's the first thing that we tell our client, that if it's unaudited, then it might not be accurate, right? In terms of what's adequate, usually the status certificate will tell you whether or not there's going to be a deficit or a surplus based on expected repairs. So let's say that they have to completely redo the parking lot, you know, the roof is leaking.
Which costs money.
Costs money. So in that case, they might say that, okay, the reserve fund is not adequate. We need to increase maintenance fees, or we may need to levy a special assessment against the unit owners to see how much it's going to cost to fix these things in the building. So when you see those kind of issues, for example, unaudited reserve fund, okay, maybe an issue, but you know what? It's been a couple of years. There's no way they could have drained the funds because there's no major repairs that need to happen to the building.
So is there any common practice, like do they do it every 5 years, every 3 years, or they're just doing it as they please?
So
I mean,
so the auditing the reserve fund,
yes,
it really just depends on the management at the condo corporation. But the other thing is that lawsuits, that's another major thing that a lot of people look past. A lot of condo corporations have lawsuits against them. So the most common ones that we tend to see are slip and falls. Someone's walking around, slips and falls and injures themselves, and they sue the condo corporation because it was on their premises. So at the end of the day, you want to make sure that the condo corporation has insurance, which is also in the status certificate. So one thing we look at is to make sure that the insurance is still valid. If the insurance is not valid, then what's going on? If this case happens, if a case like a slip and fall happens, then there's no insurance to cover it. If insurance is covering it, then normally you're protected. Yeah.
So now, based from my experience and stuff like that, like we know that the markets are driven by interest rates, economies, like you name it, inflation, location, and all of that stuff. But there's also the component of the status of the actual corporation and the building itself, because that can also determine whether the prices will shoot up or down or remain the same, because that plays a huge part in that particular complex or building, right?
Definitely. So we've seen status certificates where the reserve fund was once negative.
Oh my God.
I
have not seen that.
It was a building in the GTA. I won't say which building it was. And what happened was they had extensive repairs. Funny enough, it was the roof, it was the parking lot, which I mentioned before.
Right.
They had a couple other issues. I think there was mismanagement of the condo corporation as well. The directors weren't doing a very good job at managing the condo corporation. They didn't have an adequate amount in the reserve fund, so they had to actually take a loan. So they took a loan to basically cover all the costs associated with the condo.
And who has to pay?
Well, the unit owners. The maintenance fees were $1,000 plus for this condo. And the thing was, it was a 2-bedroom condo, 2-bedroom, 2-washroom, I believe, and it was priced very low just because of the overall health of the condo corporation.
Situation.
Of the condo, yeah. And the status wasn't the cleanest status we'd ever seen. It was probably one of the worst status certificates we'd seen. So that affects, obviously, the price of the condo unit as well.
100%.
So a lot of people don't realize that when you're buying a condo, you have to look at what's going to affect the resale value at the end of the day. It's going to be the overall health of the condo building, right?
And it's interesting you say that, because like I had investors like back in the day, and they would only buy properties with these kind of deficiencies.
Okay, that's interesting.
And I was like, how does this even make sense? Like, let's not name, but Rexdale and Dixon Road and like a couple of buildings that were red flagged, and you could only buy those in cash, and it wouldn't work, and the status certificate was horrible, like you say, negative, like all across the board. I'm like, I cannot even take you to these places because what you're getting yourself into, right? And then fast forward, like eventually they fixed these things. It took 10 years, but the guy did well because the building is in the location that he wanted it to be and stuff like that. So there's always the other side of the story too, like the location, the actual purchasing price, and then but you get a headache with that, right?
No, definitely.
You buy it as is for sure, right?
Yeah.
So let me ask you another question. Example. Building, new development, closed, got taken over by a corporation. Everything is fine. And now the corporation is suing the builder for not delivering on the promise. And the promise for the inefficiencies and stuff like that every building has when it's brand new, but also on the craftsmanship, like the builder did not deliver the same product as per the magazine or as per that thing.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because we've seen that. We've seen lawsuits where the condo corporation is suing the builder, the engineers. And
what is that all about?
The most common one that we've seen is, and I usually mispronounce this, I think it's Kai-Tech Plumbing.
Kai-Tech Plumbing, yes.
Yeah, so Kai-Tech Plumbing, where the pipes would burst and cause damage to obviously the units.
Yes.
The water damage would affect the drywall, the flooring. So
100%.
a lot of units got affected by that in Toronto and Mississauga. So in those specific buildings, we did see the condo corporation suing the builder and the engineers. These lawsuits were pending for quite some time. So at the end of the day, they have every right to sue the specific contractors that built this building if they were in fact negligent, right? Because nobody knows, right, at the end of the day. But we have seen that, because if the workmanship isn't up to par, then the condo corporation would have a right to commence a lawsuit. And that also might lead a lot of people not to go through with the purchase of a condo unit, because they might say, hey, there's deficiencies in this building, or there's this one deficiency, what's gonna,
if it's a major one, of course, like plumbing is not something you just, you cutting the walls, who knows? Like there's so much involved, right?
You would have to essentially rectify the
whole thing, right?
Yeah.
But I was talking in particular, and I heard this from a colleague of mine, and he was saying, he's like, they are suing the actual builder that he not provide particular floors in the lobby or stuff like that, you know what I mean? So I'm like, I don't know, like, to be honest with you, like, I have no idea how to answer the question. I've never been in this, but it's funny that the corporation can actually do that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And at the end of the day, some status certificates will actually tell you the name of the lawsuit. You can actually get the contact information of the lawyer that's commencing the lawsuit. And obviously you would need consent from the party involved to get that file. But you could technically try to request that file if you want to go over the claim and see what are they claiming, why are they claiming it, just in case you want to look into the lawsuit. But if at the end of the day you're being sued, let's say you're buying a unit and the condo corporation is being sued. If the insurance has kicked in, normally you have nothing to worry about because they're defending it on the condo corporation's behalf. But if the condo corporation is suing somebody and it doesn't specify what it's for, I feel like I would definitely look into that. For example,
Yeah, because
like
it could be,
right?
it could be up in the air and stuff like
It
that.
could be significant, right? And there was actually one status certificate that comes to mind. I think it was somewhere in Brantford, and the condo corporation was suing, it may have been the builder in that case, because they said that when the building was built, it encroached upon someone else's property. And it was an old building.
Oh my God.
So I don't know what the merit was to that case. I don't know if it was a frivolous lawsuit. I don't know if it was a legitimate lawsuit. But we saw that in the status certificate. But people were still buying units in that building. They didn't stop them from doing that. But my clients were kind of like hesitant.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you'll see it. You'll see everything in a status.
Well, listen, it's definitely
part.
a complicated process.
Definitely.
And like that. The warmest suggestion is for you to send your status certificates to your lawyer or to Nick here, and we can definitely look over everything what needs to be looked at.
I'm more than happy to help.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
It definitely has been a pleasure.
Appreciate it.